perfect. A nice little cave. An excellent place where I could get it out of the storm, dry my gear, build a fire, and get a little rest before I move on. Now I've been hiking most of the afternoon. We've had a 32-degree snowstorm and rain. Now, that's some of the worst weather in the world you can have. It's a good way to succumb to hypothermia. You get all wet and these cold temperatures. I'd rather face 25 below zero in a survival situation than this kind of wet, cold. Now I want to build a fire in this cave. As you can see, as I've been showing, the tinder, the available tinder in the forest is pretty wet. The snow's been melting almost as fast as it's been falling. But inside this small overhanging rock, I call it a cave, is a very small area that's out of the storm. You see where the fall leaves are very dry. There's even some sticks to use as tinder to start a fire. Let's see if I can get one going and take a break. Now before you attempt to build your fire, you should gather at least the basics of what you'll need for fuel. Here I went in the woods and got some of the larger sticks. They're damp, but once I start the fire, they'll dry out on top of it and eventually catch fire themselves. I was able to locate some birch bark, another excellent fire starting aid. It's full of natural oils, but then again, the surface of the bark is wet from the rain and snow, so it's not going to catch easily right away necessarily. And I've got the relatively dry wood that I discovered in this cave. Now this wood isn't entirely dry, it's damp just because the air is damp and it's absorbed some of the moisture, but it certainly is drier than the wood found in the rest of the forest, and that'll be my basis for starting the fire, is using this drier material. Okay, I've gathered my basic fire making materials. I've got some birch bark that I've put on the base on the ground, and some of the relatively dry leaves from inside the cave. And I'm going to start this fire using a spark from a firesteel.com fire steel. Now the good thing about always carrying a fire steel with you is that they work even when wet. You could drop them in a stream, or your pack could get wet from the rain or snow, and these will continue to perform for you. I also have a firesteel.com scraper, which is maximized for the number of sparks you can get from the fire steel. Now these fire steels produce 5,500 degree sparks, and they're very, very easy to use, just like this. Just simply scraping it, you can see the big robust sparks from the fire steel bouncing all over. Now the problem is this tinder is just a little bit damp, and I'm going to help it along a bit by using a magnesium rod. You can get these magnesium rods at firesteel.com also. They're very light in weight and they pack very well. To use the magnesium as a fire starting aid, you simply scrape off pieces with your knife blade or with a fire steel scraper until you get a nice little pile. I don't know if you can see these very easily because of the lighting conditions, but I've scraped a bunch of them beforehand. They look something like that. It takes a little while, maybe 5 minutes or so, but it's very easy to do. And these magnesium scrapings will burn at a couple thousand degrees Fahrenheit, which should be enough to ignite even this rather damp tinder. Let's see how it works with a fire steel. There we go. It's burning very, very hot. White hot, in fact. And I'll put some of the wood on now. Now here what I've done is I've put the wet wood that I've gathered from the forest floor on top of the drier kindling that I obtained from inside the cave. And as this drier kindling burns, it's going to dry out the wet wood, which in turn will catch on fire. And I just slowly keep adding bigger and bigger pieces. You can see that the fire is already starting to take off. It's been going for about 5 minutes already, and it's just a slow and gradual process until you can get a good bed of coals going, onto which you can put more relatively wet wood. Life in the Great North Woods. Someone's got to do it. As beautiful as these mountains are, they can be just as deadly. I was fortunate because I had the means to start a fire and found this nice little cave to stay in. If I wanted to spend the night, I could, and I'd probably sleep very comfortably. But without a fire, being wet and cold as I was, I could very well have died. That's the importance of fire. It's survival 101. I'm Ron Fontaine from firesteel.com.